All right, so we need to route each of these columns over to the right side. So what I'm going to do is start with this farthest one here and just route it over as far as I can before I need to make a change. And then we'll just go ahead and delete that stub. And each of these additional columns, we'll just do the same thing where we start and just route over as far as we can and go to the next one. Yeah, we're minorly inconvenienced by this LCD pin here, but it shouldn't be too big of a deal as we have plenty of space above here for the rest of these signals as well. We're just going to keep on going. And you can be a little rough with this. You know, ultimately, if you're using the assisted mode, it won't ever cross with another trace, so it'll just kind of hug it as close as it can. So what we can do later is just use the slide command to, separate these a little bit. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that right now. And get all of these traces nice and close to each other. And then we will worry about spacing them out. Now, ideally, you don't want these to be right next to each other because then you could have issues with crosstalk. These aren't going to be super fast signals by any means, but we do still want to be aware that there is a possibility for crosstalk if these traces are too close to each other and run parallel for too long amount of a time. So we will be separating these out later. Don't worry. I'm scaring you with these parallel traces. Perfect. Okay, so at this point you can see that almost all the rest of our connections are limited to this section over here. What I can do also now is for these, what is it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns. Yeah, for these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns, we have a couple rows as well. We can just route them up here by dropping a via to the bottom layer. And then we should be more or less good to go. I can already see that we'll probably have to do just a little bit of pin swapping. So, these traces are having to be connected here while these traces are connecting over here. That's not too big of a problem. You can use some advanced pin swapping features, or, you can simply just move the net label on the controller page of our schematic to whichever pin makes it a little easier to connect to. So let's just keep on going with some of these here. Yeah, and it looks like even these row connections, it'll be easier if we can connect them to these pins over here rather than having to connect all of these guys to this other side. And the nice thing is that when you're working with a microcontroller, a lot of these issues you can just solve with software. So that is what we will be relying on here as well. All right, so we are getting actually pretty close here. What I will probably end up doing is moving this component just a little closer so we have more vertical space here. So let's go ahead and turn on my quick view and probably want to use the move command and these 3 components. Let's make sure we're just selecting components, 4 components. Okay, select all of them. There we go. Let's move them just a little closer here. With this extra vertical space, we'll be able to use the slide command, move these traces around a little bit just so that we're not too tightly coupled. I can even move these here just to make sure that there really isn't any unnecessarily super tight connections. You can always select multiples and slide them at the same time. Not sure why I was doing one at a time, but that's how you do it. There we go. So now we have pretty decent spacing. We can even move this like that. Move this over. Really get this nice and efficient. These unfortunately here need to be close to each other for just a little bit, but again, it's more about how long they are parallel to each other very closely rather than if. So this little bit of space here is not too big of an issue. And then these we could space out a little more, but ultimately I don't think I'm too worried. Let's just do it for the sake of being consistent, where we can at least. If we need to tighten things up just a little bit, that's not a problem either. I tend to design for worst case, so, well, these are pretty close indeed, but oftentimes even this much spacing might be a little bit of overkill. And in this design, I might even be able to get away with having them super tightly close together because we are not running very fast signals at all. And in fact, I'm pretty sure I have gotten away with worse in the past. All right, we'll call that good for now. Now we have to worry about the rest of these connections. So what I am going to do is let's turn off all of the connections first. And then we're going to use our selection tool to select my nets. Or I can do traces as well. We're just going to select them and then select all connection. No, what we want. We want to select nets. Where is my nets? Nets, there we go. So select these, right click, show connection. Select these, right click, show connection. and these. Right click, show connections. So this should be all the connections for the switches in my design. Let's see if, no, that's for the LEDs. So really what we should be able to do is, based off of this, do some pin swapping and basically make it so that each of these connections are more or less one-to-one without having to do too many dropping of vias. So because these videos are already getting quite long, I am going to pause the video and just really quickly swap the nets, and I'll just show you what it looks like right now. And if I go to my controller page, right, so over here we have, you know, row 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, columns 0 through 17, 18, and the, oh, not LED data, we don't care about that. But what I'll do is I'll simply just move these off-page connectors around so that my connections are as efficient as possible. So see you in a couple minutes once I'm done with swapping the pins.